I went to see a band on Tuesday night at the relatively recently reopened Brixton Academy. The band is called the Viagra Boys, and they are a kind of post-punk, Swedish, based out of Stockholm band, fronted by an American expat called Sebastian Murphy, who is a character bigger than life. The band started in 2015, and in April of this year, they released their new album called Viagra Boys. Something like that. Bit of a play on their own name. Their style could be described as just political commentary with a edge attached to it. And I've enjoyed watching them since I first discovered one of their tracks on YouTube and then subsequently saw them perform at Glastonbury in 2023, I think. And I've been quite impressed by them, and I think they're a bit of the future of music, particularly rock music, with an edge. So I picked up these tickets. I had 4 tickets. Me and Yvonne, my wife Yvonne, my mate James, and I had a spare ticket, and I'll get to that in a second. But about Brixton Academy, as a Glaswegian who's used to going to gigs at places like the Barrowlands, which carries a bit of kudos in terms of the venue and how it's seen by artists. The Barrowlands is famous because it has a spring dance floor, which means when you're at a gig, if you're bouncing right to the gig, the floor actually aids the bounce, and so it creates this kind of like quite a cool just momentum for the crowd. But going to places like Brixton Academy was closed after they suffered a number of unfortunate fatalities due to crowd crushing at an event a couple of years ago. Now, there's been a whole host of investigations and police inquiries into the security, and I'm pleased to say that no security firm has been appointed and the licence has been re-granted. So it was nice to be back in that venue because as a Glaswegian, as a Scot coming down to England and being outside of London and going to gigs in London, the atmosphere is always slightly different, probably because it's quite an eclectic crowd. But the venues are just great. I mean, Brixton Academy, so many great bands have performed in there, made videos in there. I think of bands like Placebo or Feeder. And to see somebody like Viagra Boys play in there felt quite special. And I'll tell you, after the kind of week that I've had, if you follow any of my videos, you'll know that the last couple of videos have just been frustration for me. So that was just the perfect Tuesday night out. Now, I was feeling just a bit off about the travel into London, just not really that keen on it. But we drove down to Stanmore, we took the tube, we got to Brixton, went for a bite to eat, and then we went to the gig. Now, on the run up to the gig, this is what I really want to talk about, not just the gig itself, but my mate James has 3 kids. He's got twins, Maya and Jake, and then his older son, Hayden. And his older son, Hayden, is 15 years old, about the same age as me when I went to my first ever gig. And I've talked about this on YouTube before, about the trust of my father allowing me to go see Metallica and what that meant to me, and how it kind of set me off on a path in life of dealing with those trust factors from my father about going to big events and always trying to live up to his expectations of what, to be a good kid, not get into trouble and enjoy the show, which meant that I could go to more shows. So Yvonne and I, my wife and I, we don't have kids, so I live vicariously through my mates who have children themselves. I love to hear about their families, their kids, and what they're up to, because it just kind of tells me the tales of life as a parent that I don't personally experience. So when I had this spare ticket, I said to my mate, why don't you bring your lad Hayden? I think it might be a great opportunity for him just to get a bit of culture, a bit of excitement from a big show, kind of see the ins and outs of it, whilst there in the safety of us and his dad. And so he spoke to Hayden, and Hayden decided that he would like to come to the show. And what I think is important out of this is that we now live in a generation of like the TikTok generation, where music and media and content is consumed in 10 to 30 second bursts, the dopamine hit before you flick on to the next thing. So kids sitting down and listening to the albums listening to bands and getting into things is hard these days, right? So I felt really excited about the opportunity about Hayden coming with us, because Yvonne and I said, this might blow his mind a little bit. First ever concert, and seeing something like this in Brixton Academy. Well, I'm going to cut over the top here a little bit with just some footage from the show, but man, it was just reinvigorating. It just gave me everything I needed. But do you know what was the most exciting out of it? First of all, seeing Hayden's face. We walked into the venue and we got him a t-shirt, right? Tour t-shirt, because you should get a tour t-shirt when you go see a band. Support the band. Get some merch, something that you're going to look back on in 10, 20 years' time with a bit of fondness, the way that I do about the stuff that I've bought. And I know I'm projecting a little bit through my mate's kid here, but, you know, if I had had somebody older that would take me to those gigs, I'll think about what I might have learned, things I would have discovered quicker, you know, the kind of etiquette of going to gigs, you know, how to kind of conduct yourself a little bit. So Hayden's with us, we get him a t-shirt, and I'll show a picture of him here we took before we went into the actual hall as we sat outside just having a chat. And I could see his face, it just, you know, a bit of excitement and apprehension and not really knowing what to expect. But the crowd also just blew me away. It was a gig that I have not seen the likes of in many years. The venue holds about 2,500 people. And the band opened with Man Made of Meat, I think the track is called, and it was just blistering. And what I was so loving was that we were on the balcony upstairs looking down, front row of the balcony, looking down over the crowd, 2,500 people, so maybe 2,000 downstairs, and there was hardly a phone in sight, mainly because the gig was such chaos, just waves of bouncing and pool, just a pit, like a proper pit, right? And to me, that just gave me like the tingles down the arms and the excitement. But occasionally, as I glanced round at my mate and his son, it was just so enjoyable. Just so enjoyable to see his face, because I could tell he was just like, whoa, what is going on here? People swimming across the crowd, you know, just pulling and pushing and the sweat coming up. And I videoed 3 songs, which I'm layering over the top just now to kind of let you see the band in action. Sebastian Murphy is a character, carries the sunglasses on, the persona of a rock legend, massive beer belly, covered in tattoos, a punk frontman if ever you saw it. But the rest of the band, talented bunch of musicians, saxophone, keyboard, guitar, bass and drums, all making this band just raucous in the arena. So, you know, the last couple of days, I talked about tax issues yesterday, which I'm dealing with today, the BBC the day before, and I just needed something a bit light on the content today to kind of take myself out of that stagnant feeling from the last couple of days. And what I'm playing back in my mind is watching these couple of videos that I recorded from the show and just reminiscing about how good it was. But standout tracks, if you want to check this band out: Sports, Research Chemicals, and the new track which they played in the encore, Bog Body. A track that I was kind of a bit confused by when I first heard it, but hearing it live, I was like, this is a live song. This is a song that the crowd can get behind and cheer. Live music. I know people message me, and we talked about gigs before. It really fills my soul. So even though the last couple of days were quite stressful with just these endless letters that come in, Tuesday night was my cup being refilled with just excitement of life, motivation of music, what it does to you, and also just being able to enjoy seeing my mate's son. When we came out of the gig afterwards, I was chatting to him. We got on the tube, we were chatting, and as they cut off to head their direction, and Yvonne and I headed back to Northampton, gave me a little handshake, a little cuddle, said thanks for the t-shirt, it's been a brilliant night, and off he went. And I texted my mate this morning, I said, how's your son? And he was like, well, he's absolutely exhausted, back at school, he's got football training. And I asked him, what did you think of the show? And he said, I would go see them again, but I'd like to be in the pit. Job done. Hayden, if you're watching this, I had a great time at the show with you. Go see the Viagra boys again. All right, that's it for today. Thanks, everybody. And in the meantime, thank you to everybody that's watched yesterday's video, the HMRC. I've met with a private accountant agency this morning. Hoo-hoo! Chinka, 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 ching, ching, ching. 4 years, I think, of back payments. Yeah, not cheap. A 4-digit number they gave me in order to do those years. Anyway, the Viagra boys, thank you for watching. The future of music is Swedish punk rock.